Well, we are a small and intimate group for the start of this next session, so the early bird catches the worm, so they say. Nice cup of tea? Fabulous. I actually went out to get afternoon tea after speaking to a number of my presenters, Ash, and there was none left, which indicates that it was very, very good food, one would suggest. Have you all enjoyed yourselves so far this afternoon and felt like you're being educated and informed? I have. I've really, really enjoyed the discussions that we've had, and I think this next one's going to interest a lot of you as well, because when it comes to the technical studies of projects, they say that 50% of technical studies lead to failed projects. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting statistic to hear, because there are some pretty simple factors that can lead back to that. And I was having a chat with our next presenter on stage, and I thought, oh, okay, I can see why that would happen, why this rosy picture of a potential of a company doesn't translate to us for our investment dollar and doesn't translate to a positive picture either for the company. So Alex Thin is the principal mining engineer from SRK Consulting, and he's going to come up and join us here on the stage and talk about the proper way to do a technical study that won't lead to a failure. There is a proper way to do it. SRK has mastered it. In fact, some people may even say, where are you going? They've invented it. You've changed your mind about the presentation. You're getting better information, aren't you? Okay. So we're going to talk about this information. We're going to talk about how we can use it to inform our decisions and our choices as investors. Would you please make Alex very, very welcome?
Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you. And you've stolen my thunder. I would just like to add, you'll see at the bottom right-hand corner, a little logo, 20th. Just like to add that last year, SRK celebrated, the global company celebrated its 50th birthday. I just want to, over the next 15 minutes, just give you some ideas of successes and failures that we have seen in doing technical studies. And I'd like to, there's been a lot of great presentations so far. There's going to be a lot more. And I'd like people to look at failures. If you look at those, see them as failures and use them to turn them into opportunities. This is our standard disclaimer, so I'll quickly move on. During this presentation, I'm going to sort of talk about process, purpose, different stages of a study, talk a bit about successes and unsuccessful projects, and then sort of give a bit of a conclusion and some key takeaways of my view on it. Each step of a technical study is a progression of activities. And really, it's just to gain new knowledge, new information, and to use that information to make a decision at individual stages. And or to remember that it's a whether to proceed, a go, no go points we've got to look at. We've got to look at the viability, and we've got to continue looking at the information as we go through. And a technical studies, the ultimate goal is to see if you've got a viable project. You need to understand the project. You need to understand the risks. And you also need to understand the opportunities. And this should lead to a good decision. And it's not just internal within the company to present to your board and your executive, but you use that information externally to stakeholders and potential investors. We need to consider all the things that could or would impact a project and all the factors that would impact the operating environment you're in. But it's not just limited to those. What we need to understand is the grades and the throughputs of the plant, the operating costs, the capital costs, the marketing, exchange rate, commodity prices, and I'm going to discuss these as we progress through the presentation. We shouldn't just start with a technical study. we need to understand a bit more, and what I call a pre-study stage. What is the opportunity? What is the potential? And this can be sort of a simple back of the envelope type of calculation to try and understand the opportunity, the potential. What might there be? Do we really understand the geology? Is the initial sampling and drilling correct? And what is the potential quantity and quality of the product that we're looking for, the maiden mineral resource estimate? The different study stages. I mean, simplistically, we're talking about identifying, selecting, and defining. So we've all heard the term conceptual, scoping, PEA study. What might it be? That's identifying it. Then we go on to the PFS, pre-feasibility study stage, where what scenarios can we consider? And we select the best, and that's selection process. And then, of course, the final stage is the pre-feasibility study stage. What will it be? So we define the project. So the first study we do is the scoping study, where it's fairly high level, reasonably broad brush, and it can be internal. If you've got a good mining engineer processing, they can do a concept study, scoping study. And you don't have to have it to a JORC code. But one of the things you've got to bear in mind if you are doing a scoping study, in terms of the JORC code, you cannot report an ore reserve. And that reporting of these results can be a whole other presentation that can be done. So as I said before, what could it be? So we identify it. And we need to understand the options. We need to consider all the technical and strategic views of it. And again, the very simple thing, we can start understanding the potential economics of the project. So we can test things. So should the project proceed into the next phase? So when you've done this exercise, you can then go and spend more money to develop it. So it's another go, no-go situation. If we start talking about the pre-feasibility study, so we're now understanding more about the technical and the financial aspects, and we're starting to de-risk it. We've got to remember, if we're going to report an ore reserve, we can only use measured and indicated mineral resources. We need to identify what additional information we need if we're going to take it further ahead in terms of things. And upgrading the mineral resource, i.e. the inferred to indicated and indicated to measure, hopefully. So the project, the PFS stage is a chance to understand the economics and additional money potentially you'll need to take it further ahead to start de-risking it. The feasibility study stage is really the final point. Once you've done the feasibility study, you should you've got the opportunity to go into the front-end engineering design. So as I said, this is the final stage. This is where you decide whether or not you're going to take it into production. And it shows the profitability with the current assumptions you've got, and it'll help you with the design work. As I said, the detailed study will be the basis of your capital and your operating costs and start providing the budgets going forward. It's also the basis for what you need for the capital appropriation and will provide the budget figures for the project. And once the feasibility study is done or is completed, the production decision is expected. I'm sorry if you can't see this, but this is a fairly typical table that you see. This is one from AUSIM, the Australian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, and just shows the different stages and the level of accuracy and the different aspects that are considered. In the next few slides, I'll show some of the relevance and the importance of these aspects of good data, technical expertise, the process, and people and culture. Too often we see people trying to push these studies, and this is where mistakes are made, underestimated, you missed various steps. Budget, you know, you put out a tender, a request for a proposal. You know, don't just take the cheapest one, have a look at it, because the lowest cost can potentially lead to lower quality. You've got to have the correct team. There's no point having a coal mining engineer if you're looking at a deep level gold mine. That doesn't work. And the same with the processing. So the team that's been proposed, make sure that they're a quality team. And one of the things we see is that the wrong focus. Make the project feasible, or is the project feasible? This is the answer we're trying to get out when we do the technical studies. And we've got to manage expectations. You know, companies say, yeah, but we've invested a lot of money in this. Market expectation is that this project will go ahead. It doesn't necessarily work like that. And this is what we're trying to do with our technical studies. We've all heard the headlines. Project shovel ready, exceptional grades, highest margin project in Africa. And I can go through many of these different, but we've also seen these headlines. A third of the mine projects face cost overruns. Implications of overruns and the costs. So, as Christine said at the beginning, you know, 50% of projects fail. Well, they don't fail, but they're underestimated or overestimated between 20 and 40%. So what potentially makes a successful project? Ensuring that the reporting of the mineral resources and the ore reserves or mineral reserves are to recognized code, JORC, NI 43101 and SAMREC. And also make sure that there's no inferred resources in the study. Yes, you can have inferred resources because of the mining method you're using or other, you know, the design of it, but make sure that they're at zero grade. In the future, when you do the drilling, these can potentially come forward. Mitigate against technical risks and metallurgical risks. If you don't fully understand these or identify, it impacts negatively or could impact negatively on the viability of the project. I'm not going to go into ESG, but I mean, ESG is another thing you've got to think about. You know, there's no point doing a project and do it to the local country standard. If you're going to look for finance internationally, you should start thinking about that early on. Look at alternatives. Options are assessed. Use proven technology. Make sure that you're starting to advance your offtake agreements. Start considering funding options. And a very important thing is to be completed by an independent, credible consultant. As I said earlier on, don't look at these as unsuccessful. Look at these as being an opportunity to make sure you do the right job. One of the things we have seen is that over time, over the last sort of 10 years, people are concentrating on the grade, so you're finding more assay samples than you've got crushability samples. So that can lead to, you know, you're taking a conservative design of your plant, so you're over-capitalizing, or you end up having to retrofit and fix a plant that doesn't meet the crushability. And bear in mind that a 5% drop in throughput of a plant could lead to a negative 1% in the NPV of the project. So trying to summarize this, you can see on the left-hand side, this is what the technical study was proposing. But the operating costs were higher, the capital was higher, the commodity price was lower, the production was negatively impacted. If you take, for instance, scandium, you can't flood the market, because if you flood the market with scandium, which there's not a lot of production and there's not a lot of demand, prices will fall. And considering all these, you'll lower the NPV, reduce the IRR, and increase the payback. So in conclusion, if you don't fully understand and you've got clear assumptions, it can negatively impact the project. Examine all the risks to make sure that you understand them all. I haven't talked about, but make sure you've got the correct organizational structure and the people. Consider the logistics of getting not only the equipment from the port to the site, but also your product out to market. So some of the key takeaways: make sure you define the project and the scope correctly. Use realistic assumptions and support by audited numbers. And also have a peer review or audit of the study as you progress. Bear in mind that an ESG study can take up to a year to do, and I haven't even considered the regulatory requirements, what the impact of that is. So another key takeaway, as I mentioned before, make sure that you're using codes and guidelines. Plan, organize, lead and control to ensure that we're from the right people, the right systems, and this would ensure a good project. So it's the experience, expertise, and have a clear strategy going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Right, now we've got that in our brains for our next bit of investing. Wait till you hear this story. Back in February 2023, I could have picked up a share in this company for 10 cents. I didn't. The market cap now is $2.5 billion. Just let that sink in. It's a pretty incredible achievement over a short period of time. How have they done it? There's been a lot of news flow out of Spartan. You would have had to have been blind to have missed it. And the person driving that news flow is this fellow up here, Simon Lawson. Now, Simon is a professional geoscientist by trade with a passion for rescuing things that perhaps other people may have overlooked and not seen the true value and worth in. And that's what he's done with this project that Spartan became involved with a few years ago. So it's a really amazing story. It's a transformational story, and one that just keeps on going. One of the best cash-producing gold companies on the ASX, and we have the opportunity to listen to the story so far. Simon, welcome. Please make him welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Chrissy. Just to clarify there, we are actually in a scheme of arrangement with one of the best cash-producing gold companies on the ASX. We, on the other hand, don't produce cash. We just produce massive re-rates in our share price and make our investors a lot of money. All right, pretty simple story. 1.28 billion shares on issue, $1.90 share price gives us 2.43, or on a good day up to 2.5 billion market cap, 270 mil cash. I'll just look at my commercial director there to make sure that's the right number. Gives us an EV of just over $2 billion, which is pretty incredible from a company, as Chrissy mentioned, that was in February 2023 in a fair bit of strife. We managed to recapitalise this business and drill, discover and create massive value for our shareholders. As I mentioned, one of the best cash-producing gold companies on the ASX, Ramelius Resources, is 19.9% of our register. We are under a scheme of arrangement at the moment to combine the two companies together. Obviously, I'll go through why that is on the way through here. Just a bit of a shout out to Tembo Capital Management, who was strong enough and committed enough to cornerstone that initial recapitalisation at 10 cents. They've obviously done very well. And 1832 Asset Management, who had been a previous shareholder of the company Gascoyne Resources, from where Spartan came from. They were good enough to come back onto the register and occupy just over 7% of that plus $2 billion company. This is where we are in the world, Western Australia on the left-hand side there. Everybody understands the jurisdiction. Everybody talks about tier one and safe. It's probably the best place to do business as a gold company. Some of the most prolific gold mining activities there, and we are in good company. In the Murchison region, our main project, the Dalgaranga Gold Project in the centre there, and just for reference, Mount Magnet, which is the flagship operation of Ramelius Resources, is sitting 65 kilometres away to the east there. So we are very closely spatially located with that company that we are seeking a combination with. You can see the numbers there from practically nothing in February 2023. I think we had 79,000 ounces on our new discovery, which was Never Never. That's now close to 1.5 million ounces at 8.8 grams a tonne. And combined with the new discovery we made in April last year, which is the Pepper Gold deposit, which is now very quickly 870,000 ounces at 10.3, you can start to see why Ramelius was quite interested in what we had discovered, less than 65 kilometres away from their processing operations at Mount Magnet. That's a bit of a snapshot of the site. Apologies for the Photoshop job that I've done there. Basically on the left-hand side is the blue Gilbey's open pit, which was being very, let's just say it was a very challenging operation. The plant in the foreground there is the 2.5 million tonne Dalgaranga oxide open pit plant. That's currently in care and maintenance. And the two discoveries that we've made so far are the green oval on the right-hand side, which is Never Never. You can literally see it 600 metres to the plant. It couldn't be much closer, otherwise it would be under it. A few tables there. I'll distribute this presentation so you can go through this at your leisure, but basically I'm just talking about how much we have grown this. 400% in ounces and 430% in grade in 3 years at a cost of $16.50 Australian an ounce discovered. And when you look at the gold price at the moment being, touching 5,000 Australian an ounce poured, it's a pretty good return on investment. Just to sort of get into the weeds a bit more, that's the Never Never deposit in the foreground there. What you're looking at is we're looking back towards the east, towards Mount Magnet operations. That's the Gilbey's open pit on the right-hand side. We're putting in an exploration decline right now, which will actually form the basis and the backbone of an underground mine, because there's no way we're leaving this in the ground. Just to circle the main area that is Never Never on the left-hand side. In the orange, you've got the indicated component, so a very high proportion of indicated ounces, over 75%. And there is, close to 1.5 million ounces at 8.8, including a small open pit. On the just adjacent to that is the 870,000 ounce Pepper deposit, which is rapidly growing. We've released some more results today, which are on the screen there. You can see that that is a quality ore body. To be able to drill 20 metres at 8, 10 at 14, 20 at 13, 15 at 19 and 25 at 23, some of the best results you'll see from a scale ore body of any kind anywhere in the world. This is to show the background. You've actually got the Gilbey's open pit. One of the things that was very challenging about this operation was that low-grade open pit. What was missing from the equation at the time was an understanding of the geology. What you've got here are high-grade chutes. They are formed by cross-cutting structures, and I'll bore you senseless with some plan views in a second. But that's the West Winds target on the right-hand side, which we also delivered some more high-grade results for, and the Four Pillars target, which we are targeting from our underground drill drive later this year. That's a cross-section, just to give you an understanding. Out of the bottom of the Gilbey's pit, there are a number of structural offsets here, but the key aspect to this whole system is that there is a repeating cross-cutting structural framework, and everywhere there's those cross-cuts, you see high grade. These are some of our drill hits. I apologise for the editing there, I just noticed there's a small gap. That's the top 20 drill hits from our deposit and our discoveries so far. You might not be able to see it, but in the sort of blue colour are the Pepper results, which is obviously our latter discovery. The yellow ones are the ones we released today. They are all from Pepper. So you can see that the Pepper ore body, even though Never Never is 1.5 million ounces at 8.8, Pepper is actually rapidly overtaking it. And we only discovered it in April last year, so it's not even been a year, and we've been able to deliver some of those kinds of intercepts, which you just don't see. Growth through discovery. As Chrissy mentioned, July 22, it was a pretty sad situation, just over 100,000 ounces in resource, and we've rapidly grown that to almost 2.4 million ounces of high grade at a grade of 9.3 as a combined resource statement. That's just drilling. That's what happens when you take a few risks. You do it with a drill rig in good geology, and you can create massive value for investors. That's the ounces per vertical metre. 1,000 ounces per vertical metre used to be considered a fair benchmark for a good mine, particularly underground. That's the line as you go down our ore body of 1,000 ounces per vertical metre. Through the middle of the system, you're looking at over 4,500 ounces per vertical metre. It's a very thick ore body. It's tabular. It's not a thin, multiple lens type ore body, which can be challenging. You take a lot of dilution while getting the gold. This is a very thick system, and we see a very bright future for it. This is just to give an understanding, and in reference to the talk about study work, we've been very diligent on the basis of the previous company and a lack of, let's say, diligence around their study work. We've been incredibly diligent. We have a lot of independent review. We use external consultants for a lot of our valuation. What you're looking at in front of you there is conceptual mine design with stope panels. Each one of those squares is a stope, 25 by 20, anywhere between 13 and 30 metres wide. You can see on the colouring there, on the grade, the orange is plus 6 grams a tonne. On the right-hand side, you're looking at the red, meaning more than 10,000 ounces in each one of those panels. This is an incredibly high-grade system, which will yield a lot of cash flow. I'll get myself in trouble if I talk about that too much more. That's our underground portal that we put in. A bit of a tribute to the team and the brand that we've created, putting a giant 5 metre high metal Spartan helmet mounted on the side of that open pit. So forever and a day, that will be a legacy to the Spartan team that put this whole thing together. On the right-hand side is a plan view of the development drive, or the exploration drill drive that we're putting in at the moment. It's a little bit behind time there, 10th of March, but we are very well advanced on that, and we anticipate getting to Never Never but in the second half of this year. Just a few more photos there. Drilling underground, we've recently embarked on that. We have one rig at the moment. We'll have a second one turning up in about June, and that is continuing to punch holes into these incredible discoveries we've made, plus some of the upside, which is those high-grade structures sticking out of the bottom of the Gilbey's pit. Plan view. So we'll just do a bit of drawing here. Apologies for the sketch. These blue lines are cross-cutting structures that go across stratigraphy. Stratigraphy is just a rock package. That stratigraphy is the yellow line. Right where you see those blue structures cross-cutting are prospects or existing gold deposits. We are seeing this right across the system. This is exactly the same type of system that they have at Mount Magnet, where there's been over 100 years of consistent mining and more than 6 million ounces realised in that field. And this is rapidly approaching half of that, and we've done that in less than 3 years. This is just to put it in perspective so you can see what we're talking about here. The exploration drill drive in the foreground, that's the old Gilbey's open pit in the white, and you can see the conceptual mine design that is targeting extraction of that 1.5 million ounce Never Never ore body and the 870,000 ounce Pepper gold deposit. Those systems are still growing. They're open at depth. Just to zoom in here, just to show you where the location of that drill drive is. We'll just keep moving. That's our 65,000 metre underground drilling program that we've committed to and that we're executing right now. What that's doing is delivering intercepts on other deposits, West Winds being this key one here, which forms the root of that Gilbey's open pit. When it was being mined longitudinally, right across that stratigraphy. The key is to look for that high-grade structure that creates that high grade right in that zone there. That's where those drill hits we put out today come from, and we'll be delivering more of those. Just conscious of time here, Chrissy. Just jump straight through. We've drilled over 150 kilometres on this site, and as I said, we've delivered almost 3 million ounces for that investment. 20,000 metre surface drilling campaign underway at the moment. We've made 2 to 3 major discoveries, Pepper and Never Never have been the key ones. We've made a small one called Freak, but we need better drill angles to get to that one. We have a northern corridor there. As I showed you, that stratigraphy is just wide open. All we've focused on is these high-grade deposits we've found. There's plenty more. 65,000 metre underground drill campaign, as I said, starting next week. That is underway. What we've done is created regular news flow. What that does is create catalysts for investment. People look at that, they see those drill hits come out, they invest in the company, it increases the share price, we can raise capital at a better price, which obviously dilutes our investors less, and we're able to keep going and keep building the value. We'll have an integrated project study come out in the second half of this year in conjunction with the Ramelius metrics. Obviously, we're very supportive of this combination. We think their operational prowess and our exploration and growth thematic combined together will be a very powerful gold company. What we've done so far is high grade, we have infrastructure, we have ounces, we've shown growth, we have the team, we've created massive value, we have delivered through catalysts, and our future is to keep doing that. And as a wider combined group with Ramelius, as I said, there's huge cash flows coming out of that business on an operational basis at the moment, and we are going to leverage off that cash generation and continue to grow the combined group through drilling and aggressive exploration strategies. Thank you.
You sure? That's all you want to say? Nothing else? Resting on your laurels. Good. Well, that's interesting. It's a great story. I really, really love that one. All right, Simon. I'm really pleased that you actually came here today as well. Given the news flow that's been out and about for the last week, I thought you may have been spending it at home planning on how to spend all of your earnings there. George Sakalidis. Next up, we have Magnetic Resources. Now, they are quietly building up some very serious momentum in one of WA's hottest gold corridors, right next door to the majors. They've got growing resource, they've got strong metallurgy, and they've got talk of both open pit and underground potential. So this story is shaping up, I reckon, George, as a very compelling play, and we're looking forward to hearing you talk about it now. George is actually the founder of Magnetic Resources, and I'd like you please to give you your full attention. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's good to be here. We happen to have 40% of our shareholding in Singapore. Yeah, so we're exploring in that world-class belt, the Laverton district. Some big mines here, Sunrise Dam, 16 million ounces, Wallaby, 7 million ounces. And we happen to have made significant discoveries in that belt. We're very close to existing processing facilities, and we've found 3 main deposits. The total's 33.1 at 1.8, but the principal deposit is Lady Julie North 4. We have 23.6 at 2.04 for 1.55 million ounces. And you'll see after our talk today that that deposit keeps giving and it's getting bigger. And we're actually surprised how it's grown. We did put out some economics last year in August at Diggers and Dealers. This was taking into account an open cut, about 100,000 ounces per annum. Great economics, NPV 925, internal rate of return 135, payback in 1 year. But that's going to change because we've now found so much material that we're including in underground, and it'll be 150,000 ounces and greater per year. And at the same time, we have to take into account the gold price, because the previous work we did was at 3,200. If you're not aware, it broke 5,000 today. Okay, so we only have 266 million shares. I've kept the company pretty tight. Currently, the market cap's 400 million. We've got strong holding, but high net worths mainly, so we're a little bit different. Top 4 own 45%, top 20 own 70%. Yeah, we have some institutions, but not large holdings, and some gold funds. We've seen a rapid increase in gold price, and you can see our share price is just starting to go up. We're obviously seeing the gold producers step up, increase their share prices by quite a bit, 50% and sometimes higher in the last 4 or 5 months. We do expect our share price to increase at a faster rate, given we're close to a production story. So we'll talk more about that. Okay, so when we talk about our economic study, we're talking about the first 3 deposits, Lady Julie North 4, Lady Julie Central and Hawk's Nest 9. We have not included any other resources that we have. Laverton is 300 kilometres north of Kalgoorlie. It's probably the second highest inventory of resources next to Kalgoorlie. Okay, so Lady Julie North 4, it's shown in light pink and red, and that's grown from 0.1 million ounces in June 2022 to sit at 1.55 million ounces. I believe that'll grow quite dramatically over the next few months, and I'll explain why. In the background, we are completing a feasibility, which we expect to be out in the next few months. Okay, straight into the main deposit. It's about 700 metres in length. The central zone goes down to 1 kilometre down dip, so it's a very significant deposit. The third one on your right-hand side is a brand new zone, which we are now drilling. We do expect the inventory for this deposit to grow as a result of this, and we're hoping it breaks the 2 million ounces. Our average grade has been 2.04 grams so far. We expect that to be slightly higher, but again, that'll be calculated over the next month or so. In the background, the feasibility is continuing. Now, in terms of ounce per vertical metre, it's quite good. From 30 to 400 metres, it's actually 4,700 ounces per vertical. Sorry, from 100 to 300, it's 4,700 ounces per vertical metre, and most of that is open cut. So it's a pretty sensational deposit. Clearly, the economics will be pretty amazing given those ounces per vertical metre. We do have quite a difference from the left-hand side to the right. On the left-hand side of the southern side, we have silica pyrite alteration, quite strong, and multiple lodes. As we go north, we have a strong ultramafic alteration in both the central and the northern lode. And often the rock goes from black to grey because of the gold alteration, and then it goes almost apple green. And we see 20 to 30 metre intersections, sometimes higher, and the material is often very green. In fact, if you go to my booth, you'll see this green rock which carries a lot of gold. Commonly we see 30 metres at between 3 and 6 grams, so it's pretty good material. And you can see this map is a long section, and it's actually a gram metre map, and it allows us to understand the variation between the deposit. At the same time, it allows us to work out where to drill. So you can see a number of holes going down on the northern end, and those results will be out shortly, and we expect them to be good. Okay, this is another way of looking at this deposit and going from south to north. As we said, the southern end has multiple lodes, and you can see them in front. As you go north, the hanging wall, or the upper lodes, aren't as prevalent, but the main lode continues, and it goes for 750 and down to 1 kilometre. Okay, this is just a quick summary of the study done in August. We've already said that it's not going to be 104, it's going to be 150,000 ounces. We expect the life of mine to be close to 10 years. The NPVs will be much, much higher than this. So it's a pretty amazing deposit, and we'll have the economics out shortly. Just as a yardstick, we've made comparisons between ourselves and other open cuts greater than 1 million ounces. We're actually number 2. The combined grade of our 3 deposits is 1.93. Most of the open cuts in WA are around 1.3 or lower, so this stands out. In terms of the internal rate of return, 135% is pretty good. Payback in a year is excellent. The all-in sustaining cost is very low, and again, this has to be redone with the feasibility, and the capex rounds is low as well. For your information, we've drilled 187,000 metres of drilling, and our cost per ounce is only about $11, so it's an excellent result. Timeline, we expect, we've already lodged our mining proposal. Mining leases are expected to be granted by the next quarter, including native title agreements, which we've been working on furiously in the last few months. The feasibility is out in the next quarter as well, and decision to proceed will happen around that time. We have a lot of interest from the banks for this project, and we are toying with the idea of obviously going into production ourselves or trying to deal with a number of interested parties who like the project. At this point in time, we don't have a bid, and so we're proceeding down the production route. This is a bit of a fly-through and gives you an idea on the scale and where we're at. This is year 4, so probably not quite through halfway in the production. You can see a small pit, which is the Lady Julie Central Pit. That'll be mined first. Quite a high-grade surface deposit. That'll pay for part of the pre-strip for the Lady Julie North Wall, which is a big open cut to the north. You can see the tailings and the waste, big waste area that will eventually cover that tailings dam. The Lady Julie North Fork pit is quite big. It's 1 kilometre long by 800 metres wide, down to about 350 metres. It's probably going to go deeper. Just south of it, you can see the stockpiles of ore ready to be processed in the processing plant. And the processing plant has got various conveyors and crushers. And eventually it goes through a ball mill where it's crushed to about 106 microns, goes through the cyanide tanks, which you'll see. There's a thickener tank there and a cyanide storage facility. Some of this will change because we've now included an underground component, so that there's extra stages that will go into this. You can see the processing hub and offices, and only 1 kilometre to the north, you'll see the mining fleet. So it's very compact. Everything's within 2 k's of each other. The mining fleet here that's shown, there's about 21 trucks, 21 150-tonne trucks, but that's set to change with the current feasibility, which will include the underground. So that's most of the story with the fly-through. In terms of our neighbours, there is strong interest. We do have a data room open. There's a number of players there, quite interested players. They've done a lot of due diligence. They're looking at it in detail. Now, we do have neighbours which are close by, both Goldfields and Genesis, within 10 and 15 k's, but there are other players, and there are some international players and other producers as well. So we'll see where it ends up. Currently, I'm thinking, that most likely will be bid for. You can see some of the existing companies are being merged or bid for already. There's not many companies left, to be frank, and we happen to be one of them. So in summary, it's a very low-risk, very high-grade open pit operation with an underground in a world-class region. Low-cost developments, and the economics will be sensational. We are growing this, and it looks pretty good. It looks like it's going to keep going. Happen to be next to a lot of the production facilities. Very strong banking interest, and we will see in the next few months what the decision will be. Thank you very much.
Well done. Thank you so much, George. All right, Catalyst Metals next up on the stage. Now, James, as you come up here, I've been sitting here for the last 10 minutes agonising how to say your last name, so I'm just going to call you James, a fantastic, amazing CEO. He's got the most beautiful French-sounding last name, and rather than me butchering it, here in Singapore. I'll let you do it yourself. But Catalyst is really interesting because if you've been reading the news flow lately, really they're sharpening their focus. They've been offloading one asset, they've been ramping up another asset. And I was looking in the news flow, they were talking about Trident. That's right. It is correct. I just want to double check that with you because I hadn't had the opportunity to speak to you about that. You've greenlit that. You've got a really clear plan to unlock some serious value. And I, for one, am interested in how it would affect me as a potential shareholder, as I'm sure the rest of us are. Would you please make James very welcome, and let's hear about Catalyst.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for making the time to come and hear me speak. My name's James Champion de Crepney, and I'm the the CEO and Managing Director, of Catalyst Metals. I'm joined here today by three of my colleagues. A fellow director, Robin Scrimgeour, is in the crowd, and David Baumgartel and Mick Garbellini is here with me as well. And don't worry, that's not a nickname, it's not a reflection of his work quality. Catalyst is a business that, like many gold producers, has enjoyed a bit of a rise of recent with the gold price rising. Our market capitalisation today sits around 1.3 billion, and we've got about $80 million cash in the bank and only about 220 million shares on issue. Now, I'm conscious that our rise being how it has been more recently, and inclusion in the ASX 300, that there might be some in the audience that really have never heard of Catalyst before. And so this presentation doesn't really touch on the history and how Mick and David and Robin and I were able to pull together two companies and effect a turnaround in Australian gold mining that we think perhaps hasn't been done all that often, and as a result has led to that rise. So I'll touch on that very briefly, but before talking about the belt and before talking about Western Australia, which is our primary focus, our portfolio of assets has recently changed. We started as a business some 15 odd years ago down in Bendigo, the Bendigo gold belt there, but only a week ago we announced the sale of one of our assets, the Tasmanian mine, the Henty Gold Mine. That mine is in the process of being sold to an ASX listed company called Kaiser Reef. So while it's unfortunate to see an asset go, from a Catalyst perspective and for shareholders, we think that is very important. We think it's important to continually simplify our business. Bendigo is a gold belt with enormous mineral endowment, but it is in the exploration stage, and so the attention of management's time is small. Plutonic, where Dave and Mick and I spend most of our time, is really where the focus of the business has been transitioning for some time. And so infecting this sale to Kaiser, we think that is a benefit for shareholders. We are, as part of that, inheriting 20% of the listed company. We do get cash up front. The business is simplified, but a big reason as to why we did this transaction is that it solved a major hurdle for us in our Victorian operations. Now, we don't talk so much about our Victorian operations. It is a slow progress there in terms of building up value for our shareholders, but what we've always had the challenge of is a hurdle of how do we process the gold, and this transaction has allowed us a pathway to do that. And we got, as part of the transaction, an option. That option was a right to buy 50% of a processing plant just down the road for $1. We get with it a cyanide licence, we get with it access to a tailings dam, and we form a processing hub with Kaiser. So they've got assets, they're currently using that at the moment, so we don't have to incur the management costs and the attention, etc. We can keep Kaiser running, they can continually use it until we want to exercise that option. So for us as a transaction, we think it has been a good outcome for both parties. In a rising gold price in market, we feel as though we've given them a good deal, and at the same time we'll benefit from that in our 20% shareholding that we have in the business, but also we'll inherit a whole lot of upside in the future, and a large part of that comes from this option over the processing plant. So this is really our Victorian operations, and I won't spend too much time on that, but we have discovered an ore body down there that runs at 26 grams. We've been working there for over 10 years. We understand this mineralisation, and we think this is the key point, we think there is much more of this type of mineralisation to come. Why? Well, we own 75 kilometres of strike length immediately north of Bendigo. Bendigo are the most prolific goldfields in Victoria. For those that know Australia and its history, Bendigo built Melbourne. It built Bendigo, and it really was what attracted the gold rush to Victoria all the way back there in the early 1800s. So we've been able to peg that ground all the way north there, and it is a joint venture with the largest, the wealthiest person in Australia, Gina Reinhart, Hancock Prospecting, and so really capital is something that is more readily available for us than for others. But outside of that, we've got a business, and this is really the main game for Catalyst. We are focused on the Plutonic Belt, and so Mick and Dave and I spend an inordinate amount of time together putting together this plan and trying to bring this plan into fruition. It's been a long journey to get to here. We met as a group some nearly 18 months ago. 18 months ago, Catalyst was a business that really only had a Tasmanian operation, 25,000 ounces, and an exploration pre-resource at Bendigo. So that's not something that attracted institutional investors. Over the last 18 months, we've seen our market capitalisation rise from 100 million up to about 1.4. How we've been able to do that is because first we went and identified the Plutonic Gold Belt, a very storied gold belt. It's got a processing plant, it's got a camp, it's got an airstrip, it's got an enormous mineralisation, enormous endowment, 6 million, 7 million ounces of past production. The problem is we went and bought the next door neighbour. So we didn't have the processing plant. Now we thought we had to buy the next door neighbour to Plutonic, the actual mine, because it didn't work unless it had exploration upside, and much of this presentation is about exploration upside. So in June 2023, when Dave and Mick and I met, our challenge was, how do we make money out of this Canadian business? We bought the next door neighbour, and then we turned around and bought the Canadian business that owned the processing plant. They were losing $3 million a month, so they needed a broader strategy. And so what Dave, Mick and I walked into was a business that had a wonderful exploration opportunity, but was losing $3 million a month. By putting these two pieces together, we gave investors hope. We raised $20 million, and we took a business that was losing $3 million a month to now making quite a considerable amount of cash. We inherited a negative $60 million working capital position, and today, as I said, we've got $80 million on the balance sheet, and that money is being reinvested to execute this growth plan. This growth plan is from 100,000 ounces to 200,000 ounces. That is our strategy. That's what we spend all the time boring our wives about, is how we're going to bring this off in the most efficient possible way. That growth to 200,000 ounces comes predominantly from these 4 deposits. We're currently operating at the Plutonic mine itself. It produces about 85,000 ounces a year. Now that is a grind. It really is an old remnant mine, but we are expanding it into new virgin areas. But that does take time, so please don't think just because it's been quite a good turnaround to this point, because the gold price has risen, that this is not still a grind. Gold mining is predominantly just a grind. It's management intensive. There are issues every day. That's why I sit up here and wave my arms and take the credit while Dave and Mick are actually there doing the work. Our second project is Plutonic East, not too far away from the Plutonic mine itself. We're currently operating there, and we fired the first stope only at the end of last month. So that mine is ramping up. It has a lot of similarities to Plutonic. It falls under all the same management team, and so provides us good economies of scale. And as we get more ore sources, we think that that grind that I spoke about before will begin to come, will begin to reduce. Once we have more ore sources to pull from, we have more flexibility. As we bring on the third mine, K2, right at the top of the deposit, that's got quite a bit more grade to it. And then we've got 3 ore sources to feed the central processing plant from. And by the time Trident is online, which we think it'll be the underground in about 12 months or a bit more. The open pit itself will start in about 6 months, we hope. Once these 4 deposits are online, we think that the operational challenges that can always be faced by a remnant mine will start to reduce. So really that turns us to the Plutonic Belt here. And after 12 months of turning around this business, what Dave, Mick and I sat up and looked at was a wonderful exploration opportunity. Why was the exploration opportunity so attractive? This belt has had a fragmented ownership history, yet it has an enormous mineral endowment. And so that segregated ownership structure has meant there hasn't been a geological team that's been able to focus on it for an extended period of time. They've always been searching for capital. They have always been struggling to make ends meet. That isn't the case with Catalyst. With a capitalisation of the level that we are, with no debt on our balance sheet and $80 million in the bank, we are able to have a team that can stick together, and we've had a team that can just focus on finding the gold. So these are some 10 prospects that we think are worth raising with you. We're focusing on all of the belt. We have to talk to you about something, so we just picked out a sample. This here goes to talk about the journey as to how we've gotten there. Without the risk of repeating myself, it was through the vision that we charted out some 18 months ago with David, Mick and I, that if we can produce consistent gold production, we can generate consistent cash. We can throw the shackles of our balance sheet off that we inherited, and we can put that money back into funding exploration. And so earlier this year we committed to a 320,000 metre exploration program. So I might just pause there. This is a slide showing the segregated nature of history and why the opportunity presents itself, and the scale of that drilling and the lack of drilling that's been done in the last 15 years on the belt. This shows a maturity of the Plutonic underground mine, and it's simply put, just because we bought the Plutonic mine, we don't think it is going to stop delivering gold, and that's why we have 3 drill rigs underground at the moment drilling these areas, and I'll get to that further in a moment. So near mine exploration, we just heard from Simon Lawson at Spartan Resources, and he inherited a situation there quite extraordinary, and a mine that was very much on its knees. And he was able to look at the areas in quite an extraordinary way and change the fate of that company. Now our hope is that we can emulate that type of success. They've done a wonderful transaction in coming together with Ramelius to make one of the next great gold companies. If we can emulate that on our belt and discover a deposit like Never Never or Never Never or Pepper, which we do think is a possibility for reasons that you could see on that previous slide, there have been discoveries of that kind here at Plutonic before. The Timor deposit that I'll talk about on the next slide was 1.5 million ounces at 7 grams. That's not too far different from the type of deposit that Simon's been able to delineate there at Spartan. So as we move through this exploration, please keep that in mind as to the opportunity ahead of us. Baltic, we've got 2 drill rigs drilling here, trying to delineate a further resource at depth here. We're quite excited about where this is moving because it's just on the limits of where we currently operate. Timor is an exploration prospect just off the top. As I said there, the Timor deposit was 1.5 million ounces at 7 grams. There's been a fault there, and so we're going to put some drill holes here and to try and delineate where that's extended to. Trident is a deposit that sits 25 kilometres up the belt. There is a haul road that already exists there. We use it every day, and it goes from the Trident deposit down to the processing plant. We recently released these results, particularly this result at depth, 1 metre at 1 gram. That might not sound like much to us. We were ecstatic that the system is still open at depth there, because it's not uncommon up at the top of the deposit that you get hits like that in and amongst other hits. These Western Australian deposits can be erratic. So the fact the system is still alive some kilometre deep, and we've got these wonderful hits of 11 metres at 7 and 4 metres at 4, 13 metres at 4 that are coming in between, proves to us that this could be quite a lot larger system than what we had previously known. The K2 deposit lies a little bit further up the belt, some 40 kilometres along that haul road that I mentioned, and there's wonderful exploration upside beyond it. We do think it is another Trident in the making, and we'll turn our attention, our some 10 rigs on surface that we've got running around there, we'll turn our attention to that next. As far as regional exploration goes, you can see we're somewhat spoilt for choice. We've got many of these options, one of which is a little bit further away than K2 and Trident in terms of development, but Triple P. And to have these targets without any follow-up drilling presents a very real opportunity for us. So hopefully there, in summary, you can see a business that's on the front foot, has no debt, and has the capital to explore the potential of this bill. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, James. Brilliant presentation. Thank you very much. We're going to take our investment dollars and we're going to go over to Papua New Guinea now, to the mineral-rich Papuan Fold Belt, to explore the work that's being done by Kina to unlock significant gold potential through strategic exploration and a commitment to sustainable development, to share what's been described as a compelling investment story, one with a key focus on high-grade mineralisation and scalable project. This is the Kina MD. This is Kina's MD, excuse me, Josh. Please welcome Director George Lloyd.
Thank you very much. This afternoon I want to introduce you to Kina. Currently we're a private company and we've only been formed over the last 2 to 3 years. We've positioned ourselves in Milne Bay area of Papua New Guinea at Normanby Island. What we're following is a sort of a two-tier strategy where we have a small-scale startup operation, potentially targeting around 20 to 25,000 ounces per annum of gold. But this is in a large exploration district, a district that hasn't really seen methodical exploration since the mid-1990s. Genuine exploration work started in the mid-80s under ESSO as they did regional reconnaissance, but since then it's had a very ad hoc history. I won't talk in too much detail about Papua New Guinea. I think the geology of Papua New Guinea is probably well known amongst many of you. But I think that perhaps what's not really appreciated is that it's not just about the geology. Wherever you operate, there are a number of things that have to come together for a successful project. And certainly what we're seeing, as I'll show you in a second in Papua New Guinea, is a real resurgence of mid-tier projects. And that's because a number of the ingredients are there, not in addition to often high-grade gold, a young and willing workforce and communities that are looking for development opportunities, and they in turn can help support a supply chain. Some of these names you might be familiar with, in particular K92, which has been very successful. It's been 15 years in the making, but we've really seen it grow up to a production rate of about 150,000 ounces per annum from a very low base, formerly a Barrick project that was on a path towards being shut down. Aligned with that, sort of on the ASX, we've seen Maya Resources, who are going into development on a cement project. A near neighbour of ours, TSX-listed Adderton, has a joint venture with a Singapore-based entity for the development of its project on Ferguson Island. And Woodlark is coming back and has certainly received a lot of attention in capital markets lately. This gives us a sense of momentum, and it gives us a sense that actually we can achieve a lot, particularly at our scale, where we can have a very significant impact in our local community. But from a national perspective, we're not a strategic project. We're a project that's really going to sort of be focused sort of within the Milne Bay province. To put some numbers on the project, the starter project that is, what attracted us to the area was initially a small-scale JORC resource, 200,000 ounces at 5.1 grams. But as we sort of looked in, and as we particularly looked at the way that the veins were arranged, we see that a lot of the gold was concentrated in high-grade lodes. And here, if we look at a cut-off of 3 grams, you can see the average grade going towards 10 grams. So we've just been running a proof of concept level scoping study at this stage, but the numbers are coming out quite favourable. We think as initially our starter project, as I said, average about 20,000 ounces. We're looking at peak production in the early years of up to 30,000 ounces. And that's coming out of low sulfidation epithermal gold system, very clean quartz, free milling gold, very simple metallurgy. As you'll see there, also being conservative from a mining perspective, the resource, while at a grade of around 10 grams, we're looking at putting 7 grams per tonne into the mill. But 7 grams per tonne certainly can generate very, very substantial margins. Numbers are still something that we're working through at the moment. I said we're at a proof of concept level. Our task over the next 2 years is really to look at how can we improve on this. Of course, building our resource or bringing forward high grade, there are lots of opportunities amongst what's currently 40,000 metres of drilling within this resource. But still, as you can see, particularly the deep purple zones, the high grade shoots are still open. The thing that's very exciting about this for us, though, is that we sit within what's a classic epithermal vein swarm. Most of the drilling is within a strike of about 1,500 metres, but there are several kilometres of veins which come to surface and which have good rock chips. And rock chips are not necessarily an indication that the gold bulks up into more high-grade lodes, but it does suggest to us that as we get into the district, it's just going to continue to open up to us. So the next 12 months are really going from that proof of concept to a very granular 2-year startup plan. There are a number of things in that we have to go through, but I think really it's about focusing on where to put our capital in those first 2 years, bring our capital employed down, bring those cash flows forward, because once we get in this district, I believe it is going to start to open up to us. And that's just the epithermal vein swarm. As I mentioned, Normanby has really had very, very limited exploration really at any point in its history. Esso probably did the best work mid-80s through the mid-90s, but what Esso identified was a large structural corridor with deep structures, sort of lines up with a structure called the Trobriand transfer fault, and then overlaying that, we have, I guess, what people would classically say is a lot of smoke. There's still a lot more work to be done here, but the green hashed area is copper in streams, the gold hashed area is gold in streams. We have a number of interesting pathfinder minerals nearby. And then we've also at surface got some very interesting rocks. We haven't found where they bulk up yet in this larger area, but we've got signs of porphyry-style mineralisation. And then we've also got sulfides coming up through similar structures, and those sulfides carry grades of 5 to 20 grams per tonne. So again, very compelling, but at an early stage. And I guess from my point of view, I sort of look at how do we allocate capital. I think certainly the priority is in moving that production opportunity forward. But for a relatively small amount of capital, there's a lot that we can do to really start to define the scale of this other exploration opportunity. Typically, that will start with reprocessing historic mag data, perhaps moving forward to acquiring new mag data, simple 2D exploration, just boots on the ground to identify more outcrop, more prospects. And maybe that's about $500,000, which I think in the context of the overall scale of the opportunity, it's not a lot of capital and gives us a lot of leverage on some very exciting exploration. Mining has changed a lot over the years, but Papua New Guinea has always been very unique in that the people that live on the land own the land. Working with our landowners is a critical part of how we move our project forward. An individual or a single company by itself can't take a project into production. The unique thing about Normanby is this island has not seen any genuine development, despite many, let's say, false summits during the early exploration years, and that there's a desire to work together to take this through to create some value. So it's a very quick introduction, the 2-tier strategy, short-term, small-scale production, but leveraging our way into a much larger exploration district that's still in many ways a new exploration district. And if you have any questions, if you'd like to sort of come and talk in greater detail about it, I'll be around for the next couple of days and very, very happy to field your questions. Okay, thank you very much.
I almost feel like I should ask if you'd like to have anyone ask you any questions. You've got 5 minutes up your sleeve. Do you feel like asking a few questions? Having a few questions at you? Does anyone feel like firing a few questions, or would you like to go back and have the more intimate one-on-one in the booth with this fella? Anyone at all?
Keen to wrap up as we sort of come to the end of the day, but I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Hello. All right. What booth number are you at?
Sorry?
Pardon? What booth number are you at in next door?
No booth. We don't have a booth.
You don't have a
but
booth.
certainly if you want to book a meeting, you can book a meeting through the meeting planner app.
That's a really good tip. Thank you so much for that. That is a good tip. If you'd like a meeting with any of our companies, you can do that. Just grab the app up and you'll be able to do that as well. Thank you very much, Sam.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Last but not least, we're travelling to metals exploration. Now, they've been making headlines with their strategic acquisition of Condor Gold, expanding their footprint. Are we going to Nicaragua, are we, for our final presentation? We've been all over the world, quite literally, at this point in time. So the move that they've just made positions this company to significantly boost their production capacity, and they underscore their commitment to growth in the gold sector. And this gentleman who's going to help us delve a little bit deeper into these developments is Darren Bowden. Darren is the CEO of Metals Exploration. Please make him very welcome.
Thank you very much. Everybody hear me? Good afternoon, everybody. We're actually a Philippine-based company, so we're Asia-centric. We did just make a new acquisition in Nicaragua. I'll talk through a number of different things, our growth strategy, how the company's going to grow. I also want to give some geopolitical insight into how the Philippines is working at the moment and what the shortfalls and the strategy to get over those is going to be in the future for us. As mentioned, we're actually AIM listed, one of the first. I think we're the only AIM listed company that's been up here today. Last year's production, about 84,000 ounces, 96 million free cash. That was an average all-in sale price of about 2.2. We're probably going to do well over 100 million free cash this year from our mine in the Philippines. The issue is that mine's only got about 2 years to run. So with that, we were looking for growth strategies in the Philippines. Time was taking too long, so Condor Gold was on the market and a very good fit for us, giving us a little bit of diversity outside of the Philippines, and also a construction-ready asset that we could bring into the portfolio and use cash flow to build, which is what we do. What we'll be doing. Just some highlights. With the Condor, we also bought a small exploration company in the Philippines with some very high potential targets, which I'll talk through quickly as well. I've got a lot of slides in this deck. I'm not going to touch them all, but please download them if you want to go into more detail as we go forward. As I said, about 96 million free cash flow. We haven't had an LTI in 8 years, 25 million man hours without an LTI. And the Runruno operation is currently averaging about 90% gold recovery. And when we started, it was 50% 5 years ago. So nice turnaround story and good results. Our growth strategy is all internal at this stage. We have all the assets internal that we need to grow this company into a multi-billion-dollar company. We got Nicaragua. We've already started construction. We bought a second-hand plant. We break ground in the first week of May. That second-hand plant arrives on site August. Concrete and earthwork starting in May, concrete starting in August, mechanical construction sometime Q4, and completion in last quarter 2026 is the target, and we're well on track to do that. That'll be fully funded out of cash flow. We don't need any raises or any financing for that. We then have a near mine target called Dupax for an extension to our Runruno project. It is a VMS. It would require repurposing of the existing plant. So we would be looking for a year hiatus to repurpose that plant to then move into Dupax once we confirm that the economics are viable with that operation. Then long term, we've got 3 key targets that sit within the YMC portfolio that are also in the Philippines. So we're remaining very Asia-centric with our growth profile, with the funding and the development in Nicaragua as our offset to that. Just to give you an idea, in Nicaragua, it's a high-grade open cut. The open cut resource is about 1 million ounces. We're looking at about 2.4 million ounces currently in the portfolio. It really is, it's about 2 hours out of Managua, the capital city, very close to ports. All the road infrastructure and everything's in place, and we've got the main power line running right by the project. It is a very nice little project. We're looking at the original BFS that was done Doesn't include the underground, but if you take the underground into account, which we have, and they had done a PEA on that, we've looked at that, we know it's solid. We will be doing the definition drilling over the next year to bring all that into a higher resource standard. We are building a 1.4 million tonne plant targeting about 145,000 ounces on average a year out of that project, all in sustaining costs sitting, and that includes our head office and everything else, at about 1,100 US. The district is huge. We've got about 540 square kilometres. We own pretty well the strike length of the epithermal area that we're working in. The original work that's been done by Condor, and we only took over in January, by the way, is only focused on the La India project, but there is significant upside in this epithermal system. It is huge, and there's already been identified 2 to 3 more veins within near mine to this. The Philippines assets, as I said, we've got another couple of years to run, achieving everything that it was designed to achieve, producing very good cash flow, and we're running at about a grade of about 1.2 to 1.3 grams. It is a refractory ore, so we're producing 90% recovery on a refractory ore using BIOX technology. That was one of the key issues that we've had to work on to develop our own internal IP for that, so that we could make that work properly, and we've got all the aspects of that plant up to full design. You can see over the 5 years that we've been here, the gross, the coming down reduction in all-in sustaining, the increases in revenue, and the increases in free cash as well. We are debt free, and this is what's going to fund the La India project as we go forward. As I mentioned, Dupax, it is what we're seeing at this stage, it's a high-grade VMS. We've got about 10 kilometres of strike length on this VMS. Gold, copper grades, zinc grades, there's significant. I'll just point out a few. You can see them up on the screen there. Just to give you an idea, that smaller blue square up there, that's about 1 kilometre long. So the main alteration we've seen that we can find at surface, a lot of it's under the andesite cover that you can see that's green. It's about, what we can see is about 1 kilometre by about 100 metres wide. We're getting zinc grades over, these are channel samples, by the way, they're not rock picks, so there is some substance to them. Zinc grades 50%, copper grades in the 15s, 7 to 15s, and gold grades 3 to 4 grams, and that's over 1 kilometre. We're drill ready, and we're going to start drilling hopefully in the next 8 weeks. We're just waiting for final permitting to come through on that. We do have a geophysics program that's going to start over the entirety of the lease. And as you can see, further north, 9 kilometres further north at the top end of the lease, we've got over an ounce gold, 7% copper. It is showing through in very different, in various places all the way through this strike. This VMS looks like it could be quite extensive, and we're really only looking for 10 to 20 million tonnes to repurpose the existing plant to start producing concentrates for this VMS. 20 kilometres away, there's a road already existing. We'll upgrade that road, and given the current processing facilities already exist, they just need repurposing. The cost to get to production here is very small. The Y&C group is actually an exploration tenement. There's 3 key targets within the exploration tenement. They're about 320 kilometres away from our existing mines, but they're on the main belt within the geological structure within the Luzon Island on the Philippines, far southeast. There's been over 40 million ounces pulled out of this area, Lepanto. A lot of large miners have been up here and are chasing these areas, and we've got some of the nicest tenements, or some of the nicest targets that I've seen in a long time. This copper target, Manica Bell, just to give you an idea, that strike from one end to the other is about 2.5 kilometres by 1.5 kilometres wide. The heart of that, and this is at surface, the heart of that, the geochem averaged over 700 ppm, with the heart of that being over 3,000 ppm in geochem. We can walk every stream and all we find is porphyry copper. It is huge, and the grades are pretty good. There's only one drill hole that was drilled about 30 years ago in this. It was only 120 metres deep at average, 1.1% copper for 80 metres. There was about a 7 metre zone at over 5% copper. Nice target, can't wait to start drilling it. Given its surface, it should be quite a cheap drill program. We are just waiting for final permitting to come through on this one as well. Secondary targets up there, Domingley, high gold. This is copper gold. We're seeing a very nice geophysics. It's come up with a very nice target, and there's a couple there. And then the last one we've got up in that area is called Bolinay. Bolinay is an old mining tenement, an exploration tenement, which was drilled, 30 years ago by Mark Hopper. They found a 3 by 3 kilometre area, which they sampled. There was 29 drill holes put into that, and they come up with about 50 million as a starting point at 0.4% copper. So there is some really nice targets. They're all on the same strike. They're all in that same belt. And that's a district-wide tenement that we have up there as our long-term play once we have the two other mines up and running. The one thing I did want to go into a little bit of detail within the Philippines, and this is what makes the Philippines interesting but difficult. The Philippines is a country that is very underexplored, and there are reasons for that. It has massive potential like we see in a lot of Asia, and there are some tier 1 copper deposits that have been identified and sat around for 30 years, still haven't been exploited yet. And here's some interesting numbers. This is the exploration spend by Australia. 2023, $4.2 billion was spent on exploration in Australia in 2023. Same figure in the Philippines, 37 million. It is completely and utterly underexplored, and there is no... what it shows you is an industry in distress. It doesn't show you a thriving, buoyant industry that's growing. And why is that the case? There's some really interesting figures that you can find out. The biggest issue we have in the Philippines is permitting. 3 to 6 years to get an exploration permit. And that may or may not mean you can drill, because you may or may not have buy-in from the community, but 3 to 6 years to get an exploration permit. Like all developing countries, you see illegal miners in a lot of places. Why? Because it takes 24 hours to start a legal mine. An illegal mine, it's very simple. Just to get an exploration permit, 3 to 6 years. So it's a legislation that came in 2006. It's the IPRA laws. The IPRA laws are based on the Australian Native Title Act. And while I actually fully and fundamentally believe in their structure and the reason for them, it was the implementation and the process they put in place to implement those laws, which was actually done incorrectly, which blew timeframes for exploration from what was 6 months out to 3 to 6 years. So the two acts are very similar. I won't go into them, but for Australia, if you have a non-invasive or a low-impact exploration program, you can pretty well start up within a month. Okay, everybody knows this. Australia's got the best exploration system in the world. It works amazingly well. In the Philippines, the issue you've got is, while the Act itself did not allow for a financial contribution to communities at an exploration stage, it allowed for a community to have a say or comment on the environmental impact. It was implemented that you had to go through a full and verifiable process for an economic outcome for the communities in exploration, which was actually only supposed to happen in mining. And you fully get it. When there's a mining outcome, there's an economic outcome, the community should benefit in that. Exploration is an expense. However, you have to go through this process. Now, that process itself takes 2 to 5 years. If you've got a good community that's working with you and you've got a good department that's there that's working with you, you can get it done quickly. But otherwise, it takes a long, long time. There is a way around it. The government just reintroduces what should have been the way the law should have been implemented, which was the way the law was written, which was to implement that only at a mining stage, and therefore exploration could come back into the Philippines. Absolutely required. How do we make that work? Well, we're there. We've been operating these tenements for 3 to 5 years. We have those licenses coming in. We saw the long game. We see the value. And with our ESG, our sustainability programs, we've won the President's Award 3 times in a row. only mining company to do that. We were nominated by the Philippines for the ASEAN Awards. We come second and third in mining and mineral processing. We have the best sustainability program in the country. We have 50 scholars in university right now who are under our scholarship programs. We do develop our communities, and our community has gone from a fourth-class municipality to a first-class municipality within 4 years. Okay, those are the types of stats which give you the impetus to actually make this happen in the Philippines. It is extremely difficult to walk in and start up a company there unless you've got a long game and you have that opportunity. We had that opportunity, we put that in place. So our development, our strategy is going to be growing in the Philippines. We have the tenements, we have all of the stuff, all of the requirements to build this company internally. We're not looking at M&A at this stage, especially not in the next 2 years while we build the business and we build Nicaragua. And we're really looking forward to coming back here next year with some drilling results in Dupax and maybe even in Manicabel, because I'd love to put a 300-metre hole in that porphyry. I really would. And that is us. You can just see a couple of slides here on how we're growing. This is the Nicaraguan assets. We're getting up to the 145 average, but in 3 years we'll be up about 150,000 ounces of gold a year. I think I'm done. So don't need to talk about much more.
Well done, Darren. So you're coming back next year.
Fabulous. I think I have to.
I think you have to too. Would you please thank him again, everyone? A stellar job. Our final company presentation for day one of our Gold Investment Day. A lot of people worked really, really hard to get this day up and running for us to enjoy and to be educated with. And I'd like to invite up one of our representatives from the Singapore Mining Club to address you all. He's been keenly watching today's proceedings this afternoon. There's been a lot of mention of this day on their website and on all their social pages, and I think it's contributed to the success as well. So would you please welcome Brian Gordon to give our closing address for day one.
I'll make it short and sweet. I think there's drinks waiting anyway. So, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge something. Years ago, many people in the audience probably headed up to Hong Kong and went to Mines of Money. And it's been really great to see what Resource Connect Asia and Vertical Events have done to put on what I think is now the best Asia-based mining conference. With the support of Tribeca, they've done a really great job. And this is, I think, our third year from the Mining Club where we've supported and will continue to support the events. I guess it's really my job from the Mining Club to do a bit of begging, really. The Singapore Mining Club is a non-profit organization designed as a industry lobbying group, as a networking, as a space for people looking to raise capital, looking to deploy capital, looking to find jobs, really a community that's really unlike any other. We've got the largest group of individual members really anywhere in Asia. And we run it with a group of volunteers, myself included. So nobody gets paid. We do everything that we can, and we survive basically on the membership of people that is immediately plowed back into events, which in Singapore usually is food and drink and hosting various seminars or learning sessions. So if you've enjoyed today, this is the third year that the Mining Club has been behind the sponsorship of the Gold Day. If we're lucky enough to be asked again next year, we will continue to do it, but we could really use your support. And the other thing that we could use is anybody who's a member giving us ideas as to what you would like the Singapore-based mining community to do in terms of various events that we could put on for you. I'll finish up by saying a big thanks for SRK and PKF, who have been kind enough to sponsor the closing drinks today. And with that, I'll turn it over for everybody else to get the heck out of here. So thanks a lot for coming out today.
Well done, Brian. Yes, a big thank you to SRK and all of our sponsors who are involved today. We do invite you to come out and enjoy some drinks for our official welcome here today. And we'd love to see you all back tomorrow morning, 8:45, our doors open, and 9 o'clock. we'll be starting with our first presentation. So enjoy having a chat. Make sure you make the time to speak to our presenters today. This is your opportunity to have those one-on-one conversations and make them count for your investment portfolio. Gold might not be a critical mineral, but I know it's a really critical part of our investment portfolios. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.